Hello, my name is Steve Wright. I'm a senior financial advisor with MCF Advisors. Welcome to this edition of Perspective Moments. As we all get older, our conversation and perspectives change. I know mine certainly have. Conversations with clients recently have revolved around serving as a caregiver or a trustee or a power of attorney, even an executor. And questions that come out of those conversations are pretty emotional. What should we be doing with finances? How are we going to pay for mom's care? Should we shelter money over here or take it out of mom or dad's name? So on and so forth. All of those questions, I would say, fall under the elder law conversation. A lot of that is unknown. So with me today, I have my good friend and attorney, Parker Clifton. Hello.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Parker is an elder law attorney with Parker Clifton Elder Law. And today we have him here for his wisdom on what is elder law. So that's my first question. What is the difference between elder law and general estate planning?
So really the biggest difference is that as estate planners, us attorneys have always kind of focused on three things. Primarily, how do you transition assets from someone's estate the easiest way by avoiding the probate process? When you do that, how do you minimize taxes? How do you lower tax thresholds? And ultimately, estate planners tend to focus more on distribution. And that's all part of elder law as well. But elder law does focus more on the process of aging itself. Do I have the right legal documents to address a situation that could be a long-term care crisis? Having really strong powers of attorney is key to a good elder law attorney's arsenal of tools. In addition to that, we also focus on how to stretch the dollar, not just pass assets to the next generation, which is always important, but how do we make sure those assets are going to last? So that's understanding the tools that are available to protect assets, whether it's asset protection trusts that can be used to lower resources during a long-term care crisis so you can tap into things like veterans' pension benefits or even state medical benefits. But also knowing the rules around what's protected so that a spouse doesn't outlive their money if there's a crisis in a nursing home for their loved one.
Okay. When should clients look to use or consult an elder law attorney, and what should they expect?
And typically, I have clients that come in really almost two different situations. One is right out of retirement, and sometimes those folks are thinking about how their parents lost their farm, or they want to make sure that if there is a long-term care crisis where there's a nursing home event that's going to cost $12,000 a month, they're prepared and understand the rules and can really use the legal tools around them to stretch the dollar as long as possible or even protect assets entirely from that type of crisis. We call that pre-planning. So people are in the door before there's a crisis. But by far, probably, being one of very few elder law attorneys in my region, the majority of the clients that I work with are coming from the nursing home. They're coming from that crisis directly to my office. Sometimes it's a kid who's wondering how to spend their parents' money the best way. Other times it's a spouse who's afraid they're going to lose their house, who's afraid they're going to have to sell all their personal property. And understanding the rules and calming that situation is probably one of my favorite meetings that I have because they can understand that there are protections, not just for the spouse, but there's also rules that when used properly to make this type of crisis one that's less financial and obviously so they can focus on the health concerns that they might have for their loved one.
Right, great. Can you give us a couple examples of some pre-crisis or maybe post-crisis planning opportunities?
Yeah, one of the things in my world that I have to deal with a whole lot is the state Medicaid program, which is a federal program, so all states kind of have their own version of Medicaid. Medicaid pays probably or provides assistance to probably 80% of the folks that are in a nursing home crisis, just because it's impossible to keep up with $10,000 to $12,000 a month in costs unless you're extremely wealthy. So the majority of my clients can't keep up with that. So what we are able to do is position their assets so they're not all entirely exposed to that spend down. In my world, what that means is helping people qualify for Medicaid maybe sooner than they thought. So it's understanding what assets the state of Kentucky, for example, exempts from that type of spend down. IRAs. One of the things that you would think would be used or required to be used for your long-term care would be retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs. All of those are exempted under the rules in Kentucky if they're treated properly. So sometimes, they're meeting with me just so I can coach them through what's the best place to spend from. And then in some situations, we're trying to actually protect assets. What I don't want to have is see one of my clients kind of down to their last dollar. That means that if they're out of money, they're out of options. And if we can set aside, a few $1,000s or tens of thousands of dollars, whatever number that might be, to afford things like haircuts, things you take for granted, because if someone's down to their last dime, they're asking their kids to pay their cell phone bill. They're asking their kids for new clothing when necessary. And also, it also provides some extra funds that could be accessible if someone needs a private room in a nursing home for whatever reason. Maybe there could be some behavioral issues. Additionally, it could help provide for even a full-time caregiver if you can protect enough assets to afford that. And that's what the goal is. It's not always passing things to the next generation, which is important to a lot of my clients, but it's also just making sure that they're going to have the tools in place to protect some portion of what they've built during their lifetime.
So if I heard you right, at least in the state of Kentucky, you could have $1 million in a retirement plan, and with the proper planning, still qualify.
Under the current rules, absolutely. I see it a couple times a year. Well, I have some really large IRAs, and it can be shocking. But Kentucky's properly following some state definitions related to IRAs and retirement accounts, which allows them to be exempted. And a lot of advisors don't know that. So sometimes I'll have folks that come in after they've already spent an entire IRA on their long-term care, and they just didn't have to. So it can be unfortunate. So getting to talk to you today and trying to educate is one goal that I have with one goal that I have personally as my practice continues to grow.
Great. Well, as we finish, can you share one or two misconceptions folks might have with elder law?
Yeah, so a lot of people assume that if they haven't planned ahead, if they haven't started the process maybe 5 years before there's a crisis, that there's nothing they can do. Even in cases where there might just be no exempt assets, no IRAs, no other exemptions within the family, there's still ways that, there's still techniques we can use within the law to protect typically 40 to 60% of someone's estate, and sometimes much more. So not all is lost. I think that that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions if they haven't thought ahead. With that said, they do have to prepare for aging, and having a really strong power of attorney document itself is going to allow your family to protect your assets from that crisis if you're in it. So making sure that you've got some of the estate planning basics is vital if you're going to be able to protect assets down the road.
Well, Parker, thank you for that information. I appreciate
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad you had me.
Appreciate you being here. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Perspective Moments. As you can tell, these conversations are very emotional. If you've served in the capacity of a caregiver or power of attorney or trustee, you know how overwhelming it can be, especially if you're the adult child trying to juggle life in addition to all these other things. So common words that we hear from clients that are doing that is overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm drowning in the deep end, and we get it. So we would encourage you, reach out to your advisor at MCF directly. If you would like to speak with Parker Clifton, we can connect you with him as well. But there is a lot of good information and a lot of help out there. You don't have to go it alone. We'd be happy to help you. So thank you, and see you next time.